Welcome back. You're watching Bottomline Africa. Many thanks for staying with us. Now, Somalia is divided into regional administrations commonly known as states. We have Jubaland, we have Puntland, Southwest, Galmudug and Hishabelle. The member states have their own organizational governance structures and the topmost public office being the state presidents. Now, Somalia therefore has a parallel and independent government. Jubaland presidential elections have been scheduled for August 2019. The specific date is not yet set, but could be very well be postponed due to security concerns. Our guest today is one of the candidates in that particular election, Fartaag, who's a professional researcher and anti-corruption crusader. He's eyeing the top seat in Jubaland. He has pledged to champion reconciliation, security and service provision in the backdrop of an avid researching career that arguably makes him a socio-economic expert in that particular region. And he joins me in studio right now. Many thanks for making time.
Thank you for having me here.
Okay, so let's take a look at Somalia right now. It is a country highly based on clan loyalties. Ideologies might have a place, but not a big place as concerned to clan loyalties in terms of determining political support. We have various clans, especially in Jubaland. No need to mention all of them, but you belong to the Marehan clan. In your pledge, you focus on three things: service provision, security, and reconciliation. Let's focus on the very last part, because if we understand the intricacies behind these clans, not all of them are friendly to each other, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong. How do you start reconciliating clans that have been at loggerheads since time immemorial? Because according to your manifesto, reconciliation is a key manifesto that you intend to achieve once you ascend to this position, if you do.
Correct. As you mentioned, there are so many different communities living in Jubaland, and we don't have to mention their names. Unfortunately, each and every one of them go each other's throats. There's no secret about it, but it hasn't been this in the past. These are communities that have lived peacefully in the past, highly productive, law-abiding citizens, and very passive in nature. But ever since we had the civil war, things has changed because of the different political issue that really affect their livelihood.
Yeah.
But what those community living in Jubaland needs is, as you said, reconciliation, because ways in which I'm going to go about it if I run for that election is that, because I understand what they need. There are no services in those. Each district, all the way to sub-locations, there are no services, there are no structures, there are no governments, there are no administrations. So everything is concentrated in Kismayo, where the Kenyan forces are mainly. And unfortunately, those people, what they need is, before we even talk about anything, we need to bring them together, to give them some kind of a sensitization for them to be able to understand war is not unnecessary. What they need to do is, they're Somalis, they speak one language, they have one culture, they have one religion. So it's not going to be very difficult for anyone who's willing to make a difference in there to reconcile their differences.
All right, now let me just ask point blank, do you believe that the clan-based system in the country holds the country's future stability in terms of effective governance, in terms of service delivery as well?
Correct, yes, I do believe that. And I would say this, it depends how you approach them. If you make sure that there's so many different communities, each community could be like, you have one huge communities and very, very small communities. One way of approaching is, we need to make sure to tell them that everybody belongs here. You could be a larger group and you could be a smaller group, but at the end of the day, you are a Jubalander. You have the same right as the larger group, and that hasn't been the case in the past. Anyone who comes there, they use their own clan to subjugate other minorities, which is not really helpful. And that's why the country, the entire area has the difficulties in bringing all those communities together. We never had any good leader who took it hard to do that sort of approach, to bring them together and say, you know what, we all belong here. It's a rich state. You don't have to be sidelined. You could have the benefits as long as you're willing to work, as long as you're willing to be a law-abiding citizens, and on the other side, as long as the leaders are willing to provide it, it creates some kind of a situation where people will have its services. For example, any district in Jubaland, if you go there, there's no dispensaries, there are no schools. So how there are no jobs. So how those communities will survive? The only thing they look at it is the top seat, whoever is occupying that position. They will say, oh, that clan is subjugating us. So I have to have the right to go into that position, so I will be able to, again, milk the system or benefit from that position.
All right.
Now, and that has to end.
Okay. Now, I was looking at your long career, and you are very active in public service, which has been in the forefront of your life. Let's borrow from your helm at the Public Finance Management Unit. Your efforts to ensure transparency and accountability have been lauded. And what do you envision for the country, and how do you expect to achieve this particular goal in Jubaland, especially, irrespective of the challenges? Because as I was looking to that report, you had highlighted issues around transparency and accountability, and it didn't seem to be well in tune with the transitional federal institutions. So in terms of bringing change, it will be a challenge, yes, but there are structures already in place, and you've just mentioned one of them right now, like the clanism system, which might hinder effective service delivery. In terms of ensuring that service delivery goes down to each and every member of Jubaland state, how do you ensure financial transparency and accountability?
To start with, in the case of Jubaland, the state doesn't have a budget itself. Imagine. And there are more than 14 or 15 districts.
So how does it function?
This is the dilemma. It's hard to explain, actually. It's just a tribal, a community running around and vying for that big positions. Like I said before, each community, we know each community where they live. Some of them are agrarians, some of them are nomads, some of them are fishers. So no one really came up with a model and ideas to say, you know what, we have so many different communities here which we could really use their capabilities in terms of building, creating some kind of a system for them. Those who are fishers, I mean, look, we have a coastal line there. Those people they don't have to depend on the system. They are very hard-working group who can just go out there and fish. So what they need is a system that administers and helps them create some kind of a system whereby they can thrive, and that has not been the case actually. In the case of the groups like the nomads, they're very vibrant, they're poetic. What they need is a peace. They're very rich in terms of resources, in terms of like what do you call livestock, which Somalia depends on the livestock.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to advocate here is, before we even talk about accountability and transparency, let's institute some kind of a system. There is no system in Jubaland at all.
And I'm sure you'll face a tedious task. It will be a tedious task to institute systems in a place that has continuously existed without those particular systems, and one that, you know, that continues based on a clanism system. So breaking down the previous system and reintroducing what you think will be efficient for residents of Jubaland will be an uphill task. Are you ready for the for the backlash that might come your way, irrespective of this being a country that is centrally placed on, you know, the clans that are in that particular state, especially Jubaland?
Yes, let me begin by saying this. Everything boils down. First of all, people talk about security, people talk about development, people talk about reconciliations. The most important thing in the state of Jubaland is where there's nothing. First of all, you have to think about the reconciliations. All these warring communities living in Jubaland, you need to bring them together. In terms like you have the Hawiye clan, you have the Dir clan, you have the Darod clan. It's like Kikuyu, Kamba, and all these laws. Okay. So within the Hawiye clan, you have to create some kind of like intra and inter-reconciliation among them before you even move to the other clans. Same as the Darots, and then you create all of them, bring them together, inter-reconciliation among all of them. That hasn't happened. And then we can think about, after that, talking about institutional building. Each district, it has divisions, it has locations, and it has sub-locations. We have to find a way to link them all together, so at least we will have a system within each respective community, wherever they are. They have at least a system in place where easily we can think, for the second phase, we can think about it, how we're going to go about it and come up with some kind of a development.
All right.
But that, again, keep stressing it, it hasn't happened.
It still hasn't happened.
It hasn't happened yet.
What is your take on the federal government of Somalia?
I have a very good experience in the federal government of Somalia. I used to be the head of Public Finance Management Unit, Office of the Prime Minister, before I became the whistleblower.
Yeah.
And this is where I've gained the knowledge while I was during my tenure in there. This is what I've learned, even at the federal level. Just think about it. Somalia, it's completely disintegrated. It became a clan balkanized. Each clan has state on its own. Some of them call Somaliland, some of them call Puntland, Jubaland, Hirshabelle.
Yes.
It's pretty much a state based on clan. Each member states do not contribute anything to the federal level. The federal level does not contribute anything
to the states.
This is the dilemma. So you have a bunch of opportunists at every level, within the federal and the state level. And how they function at the federal level? Again, the revenue we have at the federal level, it's coming from the domestic, and also the revenue coming from the donors.
Okay.
There are two types of donors that exist in Somalia, the Western donors and the Arabian donors. The Westerns do not give funds to the government directly. What they do is they channel funds through the non-state actors.
Okay.
Whereas the Arabs give cash to the federal government, meaning the Minister of Finance could go to UAE or Qatar, collect the 10 million, 5 million, come back to. So that money does not end up in the coffers of the government.
All right.
So it's confusing.
It's very confusing, number one, and especially since there are other states, irrespective of there being a federal government, these are not linked. I saw late last year, 2018, the federal the heads of the states were actually met up and said they're cutting ties with the federal government of Somalia. So it seems to be a tough journey for you as an individual. And perhaps let's just get your parting shot as we conclude with the interview. You've mentioned the necessity of systems that need to be put in place, but I'm sure there are also other challenges that are facing Jubaland as well, not just economic, maybe security-wise. Just hint on that as we conclude.
Correct. In Jubaland, like any other parts of the country, within Jubaland communities, each community has its own militia. This is again where the problem is. Within the same community, living in the same territory, each community have their own militias. So one militia became the strongest militia among all, and that's the ruling group, and where has a ties with the Kenyan KDF. So it's going to be very tough for anyone to think. So again, everything boils down to one thing: system. System.
All right.
Correct.
Well, many thanks, Abdel Razak Fartaag. I wish we had more time, but that's where we have to conclude. And definitely all the best as you definitely delve into August 2019 when the elections are meant to be held, hopefully.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for making time. We can just have a seat. Let's take a look at